Now.
Okay. Hey, Carolife VIPs. So today we've got Dr. Tom Waller on with us. We thought it would be really important to give you as much information over the next few weeks as we possibly could, really to keep you on track with your health. So, as I said, I've got Dr. Tom Waller. He's got a very successful practice down in Lincoln. He's an international speaker and speaks about all various types of things. He'll fill you in on that as well. We're going to be talking about the 3 T's. So we'll let you know what they are in a few minutes. So, Tom, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, and it's great for you to be in front of my audience too. So for all our epochers out there, so our practice is Epoch Lincoln. Dr. Daniel Brown is come to us from Scotland, in case you haven't guessed from his amazing accent. Daniel is one of the best chiropractors in the country and does so much for improving this profession by setting up online platforms to bring chiropractors together, as well as serving his community in Perth. And I've been to his practice, and it is one of the best practices I've ever been to. So it's an honor to be with you today. And I think it's really nice that we can riff off on these topics, because right now people are stuck at home and just some know what to do and some don't know what to do. And we both, run chiropractic wellbeing centers. So it'd be quite nice for us to get ideas and for our audiences to get a different opinion, because I'm sure they're fed up of hearing me over and over again. I'm sure your audience are not bored of you yet, but I'll see if I can do some extra.
We'll be getting there, though.
So, thoughts, traumas, and toxins. We know that people get sick because of lifestyle habits and lifestyle effects. Do you call them thoughts, traumas, and toxins to your practice members as well? Is that how you refer to them, or do you have a different?
Well, I don't think I've quite referred to them as thoughts, traumas, and toxins. We would probably relate to them more as physical, chemical, and emotional stress. But it's the same thing. It's a chiropractic concept, and basically, it really is the 3 things that are going to bring you away from health. Your thoughts, your traumas, and your toxins, or your physical stress, chemical stress, and emotional stress are the 3 things that are really going to have, a negative impact on your health. So maybe we could start with just kind of trying to explaining the general concept. And then once we do that, we can then dive into each of the individual things, give some examples, that type of thing, and think for people to be aware of. So I think it's really important that we make it practical as well, so they can really understand how these things may have an impact on their day-to-day life.
Brilliant. I think the concept of understanding why the environment is so important, essentially the physical, chemical, emotional thoughts, traumas, and toxins are your environment. And there's always been this debate as to whether is it nature or is it nurture? Is it our genes or is it our environment? There were some great studies done by the Karolinska Institute in Sweden, and they look at their genetic pool, and they've got a really good measure of their population. So what they did some really, really great studies to really just prove that it is our environment, not necessarily our genes. So they took identical twins. Now, identical twins have exactly the same genes, no difference, exactly the same. And they wanted to find out what the predictive factor was that those 2 twins would get the same disease in the future. So if it was our genes, if our genes created disease, surely people who have exactly the same genes would get exactly the same diseases. The predictive factor was 0. And they found the further those 2 got into their lives, the more different they became, and the likelihood of them getting the same thing was, you couldn't even compare it. So it highlighted that genes weren't the issue. The other really interesting study that was on top of that was taking adopted children. They took adopted children into a family. Now, bearing in mind, because they're not of exactly the same family, they don't share any genes. So there's no idea that the genes will cause the issue. But what they found was that if the adopted child's parents got cancer before the age of 50, the child was 50 times likely to get exactly the same cancer. And it just showed that it wasn't the genes that caused it, it was the environment that family was living in that led to it.
Sure.
I think
that's really interesting.
Yeah, and it highlights how important our environment is in terms of our health. It's not a lottery in terms of what genes you've got as to how sick you may or may not become. Um, and the same is true now. Like, it's not necessarily a lottery as to whether we'll get sick from what's going on in the environment at the moment. We do have a huge amount that we can do and a big part that we can play in that, which is our environment.
Yeah, it's much similar. If you have a look at the stats of things like cancer, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, autoimmune disease, that kind of thing, if you look at that over the last 50 years, you can see a massive increase in the amount of people with these issues. Now, the one thing I would say as well is it takes thousands of years for your genes to change. Now, when we see such a change in our population's health, in such a short period of time, it would dictate that it couldn't be the genes that are the causative factor. It would have to be something else, and lifestyle, our environment, the choices that we're making.
I agree. And the thing that I really want us to get across right now is that you don't have to be a martyr who grows lovely long hair, beautiful beard, meditates every day, and eats green salads to achieve full health. You can just do the small things consistently over a period of time that makes a difference. If we do too much at once, we'll probably just fall into that habit and fall back out of that habit. Whereas if we pick up small things over a period of time, that'll make the difference. So there are only three areas we need to focus on: physical, chemical, emotional, thoughts, traumas, toxins. So maybe you could give your best one for each, and I could give my best one for each. There's only 6 things people need to really think about. And how easy is that to do?
Sure. Yeah. So, well, I think, probably the first one that I would think about would be the thoughts. And really, negative thoughts and stress is probably going to be one of the biggest things that's going to impact people. And I also think that, it also has then the impact on the choices people make. I know when people are stressed, they're not going to make healthy choices. Forget about the physiology of your body while you're under stress. That's a whole different thing that we can kind of talk about. But just from the simple fact that when you're stressed, you're more likely to, have a quick takeaway. You're more likely to stay up late at night or sleep in, or you're more likely to drink alcohol or use some sort of different type thing to try and bring you away from that. So if you have negative thoughts, the impact that's going to have just on your choices is huge. If you bring it back to the impact that stress has on our bodies, if you've heard of that fight or flight, when our body's in a state of fight or flight, it's not in a state of healing. It's not in a state of regeneration and really looking after itself. It's really in survival mode. And when you're in that survival mode, your metabolism's not going to be working, your immune system, which I think is a really big one at this period of time, your immune system's not going to be working. And if your body's trying to heal or recover from things, the energy is not going to be focused on that. It's going to be focused on dealing with that stress. And I think that what we forget about as well is that, our minds are really powerful. And, if we were to bring it back to if we were cavemen, for example, and a tiger jumps out and chases us, our body goes into that state of fight or flight. But our minds are so powerful that even just imagining a tiger chasing us will elicit exactly that same response, which is why our thoughts are so important. Because if we're constantly, like, take this like period of time as an example, if we're constantly in fear and worry about coronavirus, if we're constantly worrying about the economy and the impacts of all of this is going to be putting us into a state of fight or flight, and we're not going to be making rational decisions based on that. So right now, I think the thought process is such an important part to look at.
I completely agree. And one of the biggest things we're doing is we're turning on the news, figuring, well, what's happening next? And that fear of anxiety, fear of the unknown is breeding all that stuff. And I think there's really quite a simple way to pull ourselves out of that stress response, because you said how it is so detrimental to our health and to our healing. But oftentimes people go, well, what can I actually do? Like I speak to people every day now, and they're terrified of what's going on. And I think it comes down to understanding human emotion as a simple pinwheel. And if you've got this pinwheel all the way around it, you've got different emotions all the way around it. Now, what we can think about is, what are the opposite? You just disappeared. You still there? Yes, you are. What is the opposite emotion of maybe stress and anxiety right now? So if you think about the two poles of the earth, two poles, they just can't come together. You can't push these magnets together, they'll repel. The same is true for polar opposite emotions on this pinwheel. They can't coexist. So if we take fear and anxiety as the main emotions that people may be experiencing now, the opposite emotion on that pinwheel is gratitude. The exact opposite emotion of fear and anxiety is gratitude. And the only way really to get out of fear and anxiety is not to say, I don't want to be fearful, I don't want to be anxious, because you're just breeding fear and anxiety, is to go, well, let me just take a minute to be grateful. Let me just take a minute to be thankful. And you can't have those two emotions existing at the same time. So if you just take a step with a pen and paper, or close your eyes and with your mind, and just simply think about 3 things you're grateful for. It could be your family, it could be your fridge full of food, it could be your warm bed, it could be whatever you want. But if you really spend some time to get into the moment and think about what you're grateful for, anxiety cannot coexist. So the only way really to reduce your levels of anxiety is not to tell yourself to reduce your anxiety. It's to go, well, what is the opposite of anxiety? And we're going to practice more of that, which is gratitude.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, right now, there's actually so many things to be grateful for. When was the last time you were given potentially a month or 2 months or potentially even more at home with your family? For me, that's something that I've never had. Even when I had Hamish, I only took a few days off of work before I was straight back in. So I didn't even take that time when he was born. So now I'm just loving the fact that I'm able to spend a lot more time at home and really bond with Hamish and obviously Susanna as well. And, also get stuff around the house done that I've always said, oh, I'd love to do that, but I don't have time. Well, now I have time, so the excuse isn't there. So for me, it's like when you change the way that you frame things, and you start looking at the positive things, you can actually wake up every day and feel really good about the situation, even though generally speaking, it's probably, not the best situation, but there's always good things to be had in a bad situation.
Completely agree. My only issue is that my excuse for no time to do the DIY around the house doesn't exist anymore. And my wife's going to soon realise that I'm not good at DIY, but never mind. To bury myself in books like this. So that's emotion. I think that's brilliant, and it gives people an understanding. That my take home from what we've just said there would be: don't watch the news and think about things you're grateful for. 2 simple take homes from what is probably such an important topic on that.
Yeah, love it.
So let's go into toxins. Let's go into chemical.
Toxins, yeah. So basically toxins, or what I would otherwise say is chemical stress, is really anything that you're putting into your body that is not beneficial for it. So that could be poor nutrition, that could be drugs or alcohol, that could be even not enough water. There's so many different things, and this is where the choices that we're making with our nutrition are really important now. Now, we run a program, 8 Weeks to Wellness, and one of the key things is it's about making sure that we're putting nourishing food into our body, i.e. food that is full of vitamins, minerals, nutrients, okay, and avoiding the stuff that is bad: sugars, processed foods, gluten, grains, these type things. So when and that's just looking at the nutritional part. Obviously, there's other things that we can be doing which are also going to chemically stress our body, but just looking at it from the nutritional point of making sure, start with 1 ingredient foods. How many ingredients are in a pizza versus how many ingredients are in an apple? How many ingredients are in a McDonald's burger versus how many ingredients are in a homemade burger with mince? It's start with single ingredient foods and prepare your food yourself, because you know exactly what is going into that. Again, you're going to be avoiding a lot of the processed stuff that's in there. You're going to have a better idea of, the nutrient value of what you're using. So again, looking at these key things, like I could run through the nutrition stuff for 8 weeks, but I'll pass it back to you, Tom.
And I love that concept. I've not taught that concept before. You know, the starting with one nutrient stuff or one ingredient. And it's really interesting. Like downstairs, like our fridge is pretty much empty. Like we normally go and buy fresh stuff all the time. And it's getting harder to do that. What's been really good is how resourceful we've become with our food. So it does come down to this one ingredient thing. It does come down to, well, how can I make this simple food, which can still taste delicious, but I know is good for me? And you say that the same things, and people know that they should be avoiding the wheats, the dairies, and the sugars. We know that. It baffles me, like when people are stock buying now and they're buying starch and wheat and tinned stuff, which is just going to promote inflammation in the body. And if you promote inflammation in the body, you reduce your healing and risk chronic disease in the future. You know, my number one thing for people, what I would choose to do at this time, and I would choose to maybe delay or avoid breakfast, have lots and lots of water, and make sure your foods are having as much color, your meals have as much color in them as possible. Because obviously we know that color is phytonutrients. Phytonutrients are really important at removing what are called free radicals in the body, which can lead to chronic illness and problems in the future. So my tips on nutrition are pretty simple, and they are wheat, dairy, and sugar out, color in, which may or may not be similar to you.
Yeah, it's pretty much I think it's all the same things, you know. It's like, you know, one of the things that, you know, that I always think about is people love to have bread, pasta, rice, okay? But when you actually think about it, what vitamins and minerals are in bread, pasta, and rice? How many nutrients are in that? What's the glycemic index of that food? And your glycemic index is an indicator how quickly your blood sugar levels are going to rise. You know, how much fiber is actually in that? And when you actually break it down, why is 70 to 80% of our diet this when it's absolutely nutrient dead food? And that's why I always want to bring it back to start with food that you know has a huge nutrient content, because that's how you're going to be able to nourish your body, than opposed to starting with stuff that's, you know, white rice. There's nothing in it. It's just starches and sugar. And even though it doesn't taste sweet, it still causes your blood sugar levels to go sky high. So these are the things that we want to really be avoiding. And as you say, colorful food like fruit, vegetables, even though just be careful with the fruit, the content of sugar in fruit. But again, you know, your fruit, your vegetables, these are the key things that most of your diet should be made up of, because they're full of nutrients.
I suppose you can just link it. Would you rather your health was boring and vanilla, or would you rather your health was colorful and vibrant? And just equate it to your food. Like if you're going to have boring vanilla looking food, your health is going to be boring vanilla and not very good. If you have lots of colorful food, your health is going to be colorful, fun, and vibrant. So it's you know, it'd take probably another talk series to get into the seriousness of it, but people know that they just need to keep themselves accountable to it at this time. And I think you talked a little bit about routines and habits on the pre-call, didn't you? Like say that because you were talking about setting some ground rules and things.
Yeah, so it's like, on one of the previous things I said, you know, right now while we're at home and we maybe don't have the same kind of structure and routine that we normally have, we need to be making sure that we are putting routines and rules in place. You see, like if we start our day and we wake up, we're still in our pajamas, we go downstairs, we whip on the TV, sit down, and then we go and make some food, whatever, and then we sit around in our pajamas, we're not really setting our day up to be productive. However, if we start our day, we get up, we have our shower, we get dressed, okay, as we usually would when we're going to work. We make our bed. Successful people make their bed. You go downstairs, you tidy up and make sure you're in a clean environment before you start anything. You then make a healthy breakfast. You sit down and enjoy that. You're setting the day up for you to then be successful and proactive with the rest of that day. And it's if you don't do that, you know, you're setting yourself up to fail. You know, also create some rules. Like, I'm not going to drink alcohol before 8 p.m. Because if you start drinking alcohol throughout the course of the day, it's a slippery slope and you're going to end up going down. You know, it's the same with fast food. If you want a bit of chocolate, fine. You know, don't beat yourself up and say you can't have that, but just say, I'm going to have that in the evening when it's there. If you start eating chocolate through the course of the day, you're going to keep going back to it every hour, until you've eaten that massive bar of chocolate. And then you're going to be going to the shop the next day to buy another one. So, you know, it's set up things that you want to also be doing, you know. As I said, like one of the key things, one of the biggest excuses I hear all the time is, I don't have time. I'd love to do that, but I don't have time, you know. And the point is, right now, we are got plenty of time, you know. So it's write a list of all those things, you know. It could be your don't have time list. And just write a list of all the things that you've said that you'd love to do, you don't have time. You know, is it picking up an instrument? Is it cleaning out the wardrobes? Is it reorganizing, you know, the cupboards? Is it, you know, reading a certain thing or studying something, or maybe doing some art or something more creative? Is it doing some stuff in the garden, making some planters, planting vegetables, whatever it may be? Have that list. And this is the time for you to be working through that and putting this time to a positive action. So, yeah.
So true. So true. You got me on the chop. You got me on it. So the last one is trauma, isn't it?
Is trauma, yeah. So for me, I would kind of be saying that, you know, trauma is, well, you know, it's pretty obvious. You know, if we fall down the stairs, we're in a car accident, these are traumas. But, you know, these are more macro traumas. And, you know, I think the biggest things that, you know, Tom and I will probably see is, you know, people that have more micro traumas. And for me, that's more poor posture and sitting. It's a lack of movement. And these are the things that kind of lead to a lot of the biggest problems, whether that's neck pain, back pain, headaches, whether that's shoulder issues. And it's not the fact that, you know, just sitting with a poor posture causes that, but it's the lack of movement over a period of time and the stress and the strain that it has on our joints, on our nervous system, on our soft tissue. And this is probably, I think, probably the biggest ones, you know? So do you want to kind of elaborate on that, Tom?
Yeah, movement is essential for the human body. And, you know, simple things like, you know, if you sat down for a period of time, your legs are bent, and think of all those blood vessels, those lymph vessels behind the back of your knees are just crunching up and compressing, and your body's not removing toxins, it's not pushing nutrients around. The other big thing is the body moves, the brain grooves. As your body moves, your brain grooves. So
I love that.
Yeah, well, the way to keep your brain stimulating and firing is not by doing Sudokus and crosswords. It's actually the movement of the body that keeps the brain nourished. Think of this, you go into a nursing home, people go into a nursing home, and what's the first thing they do? They sit. And once they've sit for a period of time, their mind goes. And it's super important that we keep our mind active. Why is that important? Because your brain is controlling every other function of your body. It has to. The only way we can move our hands is because our brain tells us to. The only way we can feel pain in our bodies is because our brain tells us to. Even to the point where the only way your heart beats and your lungs breathe is because your brain tells you to. But if you don't tell your brain to stay awake, it won't tell you moving. So movement is absolutely essential. Now, it doesn't have to be getting your shoes on and going running a 10K or a half marathon. It can simply be walk around the block for a half mile. It can be, let's walk up and down the stairs. Every time the adverts come on the TV, why don't we just do 5 squats in the living room? So just something to get your body moving is essential. And oftentimes we put it off because we fear doing like it seems too much of an ordeal. Whereas it could literally be every night, I'm just going to go and walk around the block. Simple as that. But you've got some movement and a start of which you can build upon. That's what I would say.
Yeah. So it's one of the things I did a video on posture. And one of the things that I kind of said was that, you know, we see a lot of these desk assessment things where people are getting themselves set up with the computer at the right level and all this. But personally, I feel that that is something that is a complete waste of money, because the problem is not the posture. And even if you're standing in a military or sitting in a military posture, if you do that for 8 hours, you're still going to have the same problems because gravity is going to be acting down on your body. So as Tom said, the movement is the key thing. So set an alarm for every 20 or 30 minutes and get up and move around. If you're watching TV, get up and, as you say, walk up the stairs, do some squats, do some stretches, get some movement. Again, I said in one of the previous videos as well, is, one morning, I think it was day 2 actually. So I just got day 2 into isolation and I was already feeling irritated. I was like, and it's just like, I was just kind of cooped up in the house and just but I went for a run and straight away I came back, I felt great. And then the rest of the day, I was in a good mood. I got loads of stuff done. And it was simply the movement of the exercise that shifted my physiology. It shifted the way my brain was firing and changed things. And it then changed the actions I had. Whereas if I stayed irritated that day, it probably wouldn't have ended up a pretty day, So,
well, I think that's true. It's so true. Like, there's this great expression called "eat that frog." I don't know whether you've heard of the expression, Dan. Eat that frog, but
no.
give you this cute little frog to eat, you'd be like, "Oh, I don't want to eat that frog." But if you put off eating the frog, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and you've got to eat it. So the longer you leave it, the bigger the frog is going to be, and the more hassle it's going to be to eat that frog. The same is true. Like if we're going to exercise in the day, get out early, go and move early. Because the longer we wait, the longer we put off, the less likely we are to do it, the more an ordeal it is. So, and it goes back to the chocolate thing, the alcohol thing, like exercise early, treat late. And that'll really help you get through those, those barriers. Whereas if we have a little treat and say, well, it's okay because I'll exercise later, that is unlikely to happen. But if you flip it around and say, you know what, I'm going to set my intention for this day. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go for a jog. Move into healthy habits. If I still feel like a treat at the end of the day, I may allow that to myself.
Absolutely. And it's as you say, do the positive things first. And it's like, that's why make your bed first off, do the tidying, the cleaning, the exercise. Once you've got those done, you also have this sense of satisfaction from actually achieving something that day, or I certainly do anyway. Days where I'm not very productive are the days where I end up grumpy, irritated, feeling as though I've just wasted the day. Whereas days where I come in and I start ticking things off my list to do, I finish the day and I'm like, I feel great. I feel proud of what I've achieved today and a sense of, as I say, achievement. And I think, we've got to keep that up when we're at home because it is so hard to get, to lose track of our normal routine and our normal healthy habits and our normal way of life. And it's about really keeping that up. So, yeah.
So true. So why don't we summarize it, Dan? What were your top 3 take-homes from what we've been through?
Okay, so for me, just to kind of recap thoughts, traumas, and toxins. Like, I think the first thing is, that it is our lifestyle and our environment that has the biggest impact on our health, and not necessarily our genes. I think that paying attention to how we're thinking, how we're moving, and how we're eating is probably going to be the best 3 things, and to be focusing on while we're at home, and find healthy habits and create healthy habits around those 3 things that are going to keep you on track.
Amazing. I definitely take on board what you said about the one ingredient food. I think of the one ingredient in the food, setting in habits, so getting up and actually creating some habits while we have time. Avoid the news and don't take yourself too seriously.
I think that's great, Tom.
Today. It's been brilliant. Like I'm smiling because I'm so excited as to what my audience is going to get out of it, and from what your audience is going to get out of it. So really having this time with you today. It's been brilliant.
I would even add that the fact that we're speaking about this, it's already getting me thinking of the things that I need to be doing more of. And I think, oh God, yeah, maybe I could do that. But hey, no one's perfect and no one's ever going to be perfect. But the point is, it's like what we say is aim for excellence, because excellence allows you to execute. Perfection, if you're aiming for that, will paralyze you. So if you're just aiming to improve things, and as you said at the start, Tom, just do something a little bit better, something a little bit, and keep building on those habits, than opposed to trying to completely change your whole life overnight, because it's never going to last. So it's one small step at a time. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
I love that, Dan. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks again, Tom. And I think my audience is certainly going to appreciate having you here, and I hope yours is also appreciated having me here. So thanks again for that. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. That was awesome, dude. It just